What do you think about the representation of Northern African artists at the Biennale?
I think if you take into account the globalized art worlds and how this system that it's not just the market system but as well the other system of knowledge transfers and moving people from localities, there is no longer such a thing like a geographical scape or a regional identity. These identities are constructed. You know, all of these are constructed.
But doesn't that only goes for more metropolitan areas? Because a rural area will usually not have.
That's what I wanted to touch with. So, but there is still, not an escape out of certain conditions. Yeah? It's which is crucial. So the conditions are totally different, and the frames. And that how you're getting framed is totally different. But that's a different story than trying to reiterate something like a narrative that comes out of a local that is essentialistly thought. I think this does not exist.
Excuse me, could I ask you a couple of questions?
Of all people.
Yes. I'm quite short. My name is Osman. I'm from Copenhagen, Denmark.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And, well, I have a question. The first one is, I would like to hear what is your opinion about the slogan of the biennial?
Well, the slogan should be taken, I think, as a kind of inquiry, and shouldn't be taken so much as a statement, as a positive pronunciation on something. It should be taken rather as a moment that is suggested for unpacking, for exploring. First of all, dialogue between Europe and North Africa. Is that what you mean? Seems a rather predictable and rather obvious and rather old-fashioned way of speaking of a world in which we are already in dialogue, if we should speak in those terms. We are already plugged into each other, we are already in very intense communication and translation and transmutation produced out of translation with each other. So those are the realities, but maybe this starts off with a very conventional kind of description of that situation and leaves it to the artists to explore and unpack what might be involved in this rather bland word dialogue.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And I would also like to ask you the representation of Northern African artists at the Biennial. What do you think of that? Can you talk about any of the artists from Northern Africa?
Oh yes, here beside you is one of the curators. You probably know him, but I don't think I can talk in any depth about their work. Obviously, we shouldn't also speak of representation from North Africa. I don't think the event is representational in that sense. You don't carve up the world into geographical territories or you know, little patches and turfs, as it were, and then make sure that there is someone from each one of these points. The issue is rather to present, to produce an event in which voices and activities and practices and people who have something to say in that production are brought in. Hence, if we look at Khaled Ramadan's curatorial project, we see people connected from different parts of the world. So I don't think it makes sense to think of this in a very literal way as a matter of representation. And in that sense, it's a counter-representational event, I think. It is about an emergence, it is about something coming together and then an emanation from those elements coming together. And they might be North African elements, they might be Spanish elements, but they might be North European elements, they might be Chinese elements, they might be East European elements. The importance is to see what consciousness, what visuality is produced out of that, and how that says something about the contemporary world in which we're in. Which brings us back to the issue of are we in dialogue, or is it the dialogue of the deaf?
Is it a monologue?
Is it a monologue? In a dialogue of the deaf would be a kind of monologue.
Yeah.
Or is it also a dialogue in which one has already set down the conditions of conversation? One has set down the framework and principles on which this conversation would be ordered and arranged? Or has one really taken this rather cliched word dialogue, but used it to open up the conditions for a true reciprocal conversation to begin? And not just a conversation in which we end up retaining our old positions, but a conversation which produces interchange in the true sense, translation, transformation, as I've mentioned, and produces a third element, a third space opens up, a third sort of semantic space, but also a somatic space, bodily space, emotional space, new ideas, new thinking opens up. We shouldn't too hastily call that a hybrid space, it's just a new space that opens up. And that, I think, is ultimately how I would try to unpack the more valuable potential contained in this rather hackneyed phrase, dialogue.
Thank you. Explain to me what you think is the meaning of the slogan of this biennial.
It's difficult to answer because I just arrived and I haven't, this is the entrance, I haven't seen anything, I haven't studied it. You have to ask me after I've seen it.
But more as a broad, I understand like in relation to the artist and what they show here, this is of course something you cannot answer if you haven't seen it, but more the function of biennial.
What is the function of the Biennale? I think there's a different function for everybody who's involved. There's a different function for the public, there's a different function for politicians, there's a different function for the curators, for everybody involved. So you have to ask for whom the Biennale's function.
North Africa, what is the... And what is the function of the biennial for North Africa? And dialogue?
Another very difficult question. I don't know yet because I can't see the works yet and in what sense they really dealt with this idea of connecting with the northern region of Africa. So I can't tell. You have to ask me after.
Yes, okay. If we meet again, maybe I can ask you the same questions. I would like to hear your comment on the slogan of this biennial.
Which is what slogan?
In dialogue with Northern Africa.
Ah, yeah.
What do you think about that slogan? Is it a functional one? Is it useful?
I think it's a good provocation, no? Yeah.
Like a statement of intent, of exchange, or what is your thoughts on it?
I think it's important to have a dialogue. I think probably the slogan points to its impossibility.
Yeah. Do you know about the representation of Northern African artists here at the Biennale?
Not too many I have seen, to be honest. Have you?
I have seen very few, actually, and this is also why I'm asking if a dialogue is more the, anybody's ideas and thoughts about a subject, or is it actually a dialogue between the regions which is opposed? Because here we are definitely seeing something.
Well, a little bit of both, I would think. But have you seen the exhibition here in the second pavilion there? Transit, there are some different artists from Africa the story. Not necessarily northern Africa. One of the curators is from Alexandria. So there's I also think that you don't have to drive home with a hammer. I think the whole point about dialogue is that there's people from all kinds of all parts.
Yeah. And do you think the biennial serves as a mediator in this dialogue?
Well, it can do. I mean, it has the possibility of making a very public statement, and I think that so in that sense it can serve as a catalyst.
And have you seen? Would you say these are able? Is this possible to happen here? Murcia?
Well, I think the fact that it is happening in Murcia and that there's been support in Murcia for a statement like this to be made public means that there must be some sort of interest. And I think there's one piece in the former post office, for example, which is about fruit and vegetables that are grown here. And there is a lively trade going on in the public eye, but there is all kinds of traffic going on.
Yeah.